Coming to you today to talk to you about unsolicited advice in pregnancy. Now, most of us who have had children are familiar with this phenomena. It is where strangers give you their birth stories on the street and where family, friends, loved ones share with you their opinions and their advice, even when you haven't requested it. And it's quite common, and it comes from love, but it also comes from fear. And it's a very big question as to how to deal with this, because it can be quite triggering. But that's not always the best place to respond from, because, you don't want to end up in an argument with somebody. You certainly don't want to be taken again and again into a place of defense around your pregnancy or birth choices. And quite often it's possible to just bypass by having a few well-practiced phrases like, thank you for your concern. I'm really okay with the choices that I'm making. I love researching. I've done lots of research on this issue. Thanks for letting me know how you feel about it. So, that's one little strategy of dealing with unsolicited advice in pregnancy, is to have some phrases that feel good to you, ready to go in your back pocket so that you can whip them out whenever you bump into somebody who's got some concerns. And a lot of women find it exhausting, as if there wasn't enough for them to do in their pregnancy without having to deal with the negative attitudes of others. It comes from being in the midst of a cultural sort of paradigm shift, and that's fantastic. It's really wonderful that we're in the middle of this paradigm shift. But like I said, it can be exhausting, and you don't want to be taken into a place of defense when you're doing your absolute best to cultivate a positive mindset over your coming birth. So first thing is to remember that it's a positive thing that we're in the middle of this shift. Boost yourself up with that. Second of all, cultivating a little bit of compassion towards the other person, knowing that if it's something that they're finding really, really hard to process and move beyond, it's quite possible that it's actually coming from a place of their own unprocessed birth trauma. Now, whether that's them as a mother having experienced difficulties in birth, or whether that's because they entered the world in a really difficult way and have been kind of filled with fear around the very notion of birth ever since. It's also something that it is really, really prevalent in our society. I mean, all you've got to do is switch on the TV to see that birth trauma is entrenched. So how to let them know it's not about them, your pregnancy is not about them, that it's more about their fears and their history, or to bypass this conversation altogether. So like I said, there's a few tools. Number one is have a few well-practiced phrases. Number two is redirect the conversation. Ask them about their birth. Well, hang on a minute, that might not always be the best option depending on what they're giving you. But, redirecting the questions back at them, have you ever thought about getting any healing for that terrible experience that you had? How do you feel about your birth now, 20 years on? Or, these kinds of things. And sometimes just flat out saying to them, thank you for your concerns, I'm really good with my choices. Boom. End of story. One thing that I do really want you to take on board is that when you're being offered these challenges in your pregnancy, I like to see it as contributing to the absolute transformation that these rites of passage of being pregnant and giving birth have to offer us. Empowered pregnancy moves on into empowered birth. Empowered birth moves into empowered mothering. When you are challenged like this in your pregnancy, it's not going to be the first time that you're challenged in this way. It's not going to be the first time or way in which your opinions, your choices are questioned by your loved ones, by your friends and family, sometimes by your very husband or your birth partner. And finding it inside of yourself to meet these challenges and to have these difficult conversations and to, assert your rights for freedom of choice and all the rest, it's just very, very fertile ground for taking you into empowered motherhood and into the space that you want to be in, where you can have clarity and certainty about your choices for yourself. So that's one thing that I really like to have people take to heart, is that, this is the transformational pathway. Meeting these challenges. Let's thank the universe for them and thank those sometimes difficult people who bring those questions up and into our field. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you are pregnant yourself and battling with something similar, if you have pregnant friends that you think would benefit from listening to this, then feel free to direct them to my Facebook page, which is Birth into Being Australia. I actually coach women and partners to prepare for birth in lots of different ways, mostly involving the emotional and spiritual fields. And I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can drop me a PM or check me out further on that page.